Hey everybody, welcome back to Lost the Plot. In this video today, we're going to be talking about Sunrise on the Reaping. If you're going in chronological order, this is the second book in the Hunger Games universe. If you're going in release date order, this is the newest book. So, before we officially begin breaking everything down, I wanted to say hi, so hello. And I wanted to note some things. Hey everybody, Editing Mackenzie here. I am in the middle of editing and I've just run out of time. I'm traveling literally tomorrow and I have videos scheduled and I didn't budget my time well. That is a Mackenzie issue. But I want to make sure I actually bring quality as best as I can as I'm learning videos to you guys. So the Lost the Plot is going to be broken up into two parts, a part 1 and a part 2. Part 1 is only going to have part 1 of Sunrise on the Reaping, and part 2 will have parts 2 and 3. So this is your warning before we get into what I've learned from previous Lost the Plots, which is really just the one. I wanted to give you a heads up. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you also enjoy parts 2 and 3 when they release in September. First, I have learned from the first Lost the Plot, and here are the two things I've learned. The first one is I'm going to do a better job of explaining things if I break it into parts and film this on 3 separate days. So for part 1, this is what I'll be wearing. Part 2, I'm probably going to film tomorrow, and part 3 the day after that. So you're going to get 3 different looks, probably mostly in the later evening after work, and I hope that's okay with you. Thing number 2, as much as I love the whiteboard, I have to let the whiteboard go for this series, this type of video, and instead we're just going to do more work on the back end, and I'm going to try and have everybody's picture just take up the space next to me. I think that will do a better job of conveying what's going on, and 2, you actually being able to see the characters. So if you watched the first one, thank you so much. Like, that one was such a learning curve for me, and it can only get better. The more often you do something, the better you get. As they say, practice makes perfect. You'll get that because I said the last thing in the video from last week, which was a vlog. Every time I do one of these, I learn something. And isn't that wonderful that at 29 years old, I'm still learning new things and learning how to make things better. And practice makes perfect. So, Addie Mackenzie, the best of luck to you. I hope this makes the whole show video better for my wonderful viewers. And without further ado, let's get into this book. All right, so if you're a fan of the Hunger Games, or if you've even just come from my last video, you know what Reaping Day is. A brief summary: Reaping Day is when the tributes from the different districts are drawn and decide who's going to go to the capital to fight in the Hunger Games. This book, Sunrise on the Reaping, starts on the day of the reaping for the 50th Hunger Games, and we find out that our narrator is Hamish Abernathy. Today is his 16th birthday, so not only is it Reaping Day, but it's his birthday. Kind of a sucky birthday, but you can't choose when you're born. We also find out a pretty important detail, at least in my opinion, that Reaping Day happens on the 4th of July. Just want to leave that little nugget of detail in there. Thank you, Suzanne Collins. We also, oh my goodness, before I even get too far, Before we get into Hamish's POV, Suzanne Collins has an epigraph that has 3 quotes focusing on propaganda. This is a primer for the whole book that we are going to focus on what is propaganda, how can anything be used as propaganda, and how can we fight or recognize propaganda for what it is. Okay, now getting back into the story. It's Hamish's birthday. He's our narrator. He isn't really looking forward to his birthday because it's reaping day, but he is looking forward to a couple of things. One, he's looking forward to seeing his girl, Lenore Dove. And 2, he's looking forward to the food that he's going to share with his family. He gets a little bit of a nice breakfast for his birthday, but he knows the bigger meal is going to come after the reaping when he's home with his mom and he has a little brother named Sid who is 10 years old. His dad has passed away before this story happens in a mining accident. So he's not in the picture, but he did grow up knowing his father. We get a peek into his daily life, but he pretty quickly goes off to the meadow in the woods where he does what I would consider like his part-time job, even as just a 16-year-old who should really just still be in school in the eyes of the government, which is brewing white liquor. Now, he's very quick to note that he doesn't drink white liquor. He doesn't like how it makes people act or how it makes people feel, but there's good money in brewing liquor, especially on days when people want to forget what's going on, like the reaping, like the Hunger Games. When he finishes up his task for the day, the woman who he works for, she gives him as a birthday present like a bottle of white liquor, and he knows he's not going to drink this, but he can trade it for money and goods, and he has plans to do something nice with his girl. We're also introduced to Lenore Dove, which is his girl, and we find out some very important information about her. First, if you remember from the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, her uncle is Clerk Carmine, and she is a member of the Covey. So her name Lenore comes from a poem or a song, and her name Dove comes from the color dove gray. So she's Lenore Dove. We also find out that they were introduced through one of Hamish's best friends, who is a distant cousin, maybe not so distant, but it seemed kind of distant cousin of Lenore Dove. And that cousin is Burdock Everdeen. I'm sure you know the last name Everdeen and where this is going to tumble to, but that's for another video in like 2 months. So pump the brakes. We'll get back to the Everdeen family. But for now, all this is Hamish's best friend. We also find out that Clerk Carmine, and at this point it's just mentioned Lenore's other uncle, doesn't really like that Hamish is her boyfriend because the Abernethys are known rebels. Not currently, but apparently his family line were some of the instigators in the rebellion. We also find out that the Covey doesn't perform in public anymore, which is very different from like 40 years ago when we were talking about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. We find out that Lenore Dove is Lenore Dove Bard, like Lucy Gray Bard. We don't know the exact connection, but Hamish does in his stream of conscious mention that Lenore Dove is a bard, which pretty big in my mind. I don't think that Lucy Gray is Lenore's mom, but it's mentioned that the reason why Clerk Carmine and her other uncle, who we find out is Tam Amber, are raising her is because her mom is no longer alive, and her dad, no one knows who it is. There are some suspicions, but no one knows. So this is left ambiguous to show that she very well could be related to Lucy Gray. If Lucy Gray somehow survived, she could be a descendant. I personally don't believe in that theory. Maybe if we talk about it on our podcast novel event, we can get into that topic. But for now, we're just focusing on the plot of Sunrise on the Reaping. We also hear through a conversation of Hamish and Lenore that she wants to change things. She wants to do things that have meaning. And Hamish is of the mind of, why ask for trouble when just existing as we are is already trouble enough? In their meeting in the meadow on his birthday, Lenore gives Hamish a birthday present. And as he opens it up, it's, if you can see the book in the background, it is this striker that, when hit correctly, makes sparks and helps things catch fire. Wink, wink. And she says that she likes her pretty with a purpose, indicating that she also likes Hamish and he is pretty with a purpose, and that this gift has a deeper meaning. Like, yes, it is a very beautiful gift. It's made of gold, I believe, that she worked for and had her uncles help make. But it's useful. It's something that will help him survive as a boy from the seam, where it's hard to get what you need and it's hard to get matches for fire. This is a pretty present, but will help him in his life. At this point, Hamish is making his way to the town center, which is where the reaping will happen, but it's also where the town folk live. So as he's entering, we see this huge poster of President Snow, and Snow is the president at this point, and the words on the poster is #1 peacekeeper. There's a theme throughout this book that without peacekeepers, without police, no one would be safe and things would become anarchy. I think it's a very interesting tie back because we as readers at this point know that Snow was a peacekeeper. And not only that, but he was a peacekeeper in District 12. And having this larger than life poster of him with #1 peacekeeper is so huge. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for these characters, no one knows. No one in District 12 knows that President Snow was a peacekeeper. There isn't that information for them. For them, this bit of propaganda is just showing that as the president, this man has all the control over their lives, over who may live and who may die. We are also introduced to Astrid March. She is the daughter of the apothecary in town, and Hamish goes in to sell the white liquor that he got to see if they could use it for their shop. He notes that Astrid is well known in town and that she is very pretty, but more importantly, he notes that his friend Burdock has a huge crush on Astrid. He also talks about how she's a very quiet girl, and they're like of the same age. They're both in school. They're both around 16. And even though she's only 16, when someone is hurt, they go to her. She doesn't charge money to help them out. She will come to the scene even late at night and help people who are injured whenever she can and however she can. And so he has this respect for her. that even though she is a townfolk, she's good in his eyes. They banter, and it's revealed that maybe Burdock's crush isn't so one-sided. And that makes Hamish pretty happy because, his bestie is crushing on this girl, and he's excited for that. The next shop that Hamish goes into is the candy store that is nearby or right next door to the apothecary. And he talks about how the girl serving him at the counter is a twin. This is Marcelly, and she has a twin sister, Maisley, and they are the Donner twins. And this is a run-on sentence. I promise it's important. You're like, Mackenzie, you're talking about his shopping. How is this important to the plot? It is. It all ties together. I promise. He picks up some sweets to share with Lenore after the reaping. Specifically, he picks up rainbow gumdrops because even though they're supposed to all taste the same, Lenore, in her love of color and the rainbow, says that she can taste the different flavors per the different colors. So he pockets that, he pockets the rest of the money that he got from Astrid, and he is going to get ready for the reaping. This was like his last stop on his morning to-do list before he goes. And the descriptive language that Hamish uses is so important. In the first book that we talked about, we start to see how the capital is seeing the districts as less than. They put them in an animal enclosure. They talk about them as if they are animals and not of the same level as capital citizens. And we see that 40-ish years down the line, this thought has maybe even prevailed a little bit through propaganda in the districts, because as Hamish is walking in to the reaping center, he describes it as pens, like for animals. The holding areas that these kids are forced to stand in are the different pens for the young boys, the young girls, the older boys and girls. And I thought that was a very important detail to draw, that in the first book, at the very beginning, when we have capital point of view, we see how the lines are still kind of blurred and how they're starting to make this distinction of other than, and they use physical descriptors and physical locations to associate those born in the districts as animals. We see this through their locations, their descriptions, and their language surrounding district people. And now we're in the district point of view, and similar language has almost been ingrained into these citizens. Now the reaping is underway, and out comes this woman named Drusilla, and we find out through Hamish that she isn't well liked and she doesn't treat people well, and she is their escort to the capital. Now, instead of having the mayor hold the names of the reaping, they have a capital citizen come and select who will be tributes and take them from the district in the train to the capital. And the first girl that is selected is a little girl named Luella, and we find out that she is important to Hamish, but I believe I'm jumping the guns a little bit on that. We also find out that the second girl is in fact Maisley Donner, the twin of the young girl who helped Hamish buy the candy. I say young girl, Maisley is also 16. They then go to the boys, and the first boy tribute that is selected is a boy named Wyatt. I believe it's noted that he's around 18 because this was going to be his last reaping, and he almost escaped but was selected. And now, drum roll please, we're on to the last boy that is going to be selected. I should mention, we'll just hold in suspense. Who could be the last person selected for the Hunger Games if our narrator is Haymitch? This is the 50th Hunger Games, so this is the second quarter quell, and quarter quells have even more terrible things happen because selecting a boy and a girl from each district to die every year isn't bad enough. The quarter quells throw something in. So for this quarter quell, instead of one boy and one girl tribute, you have two of each. So it's double the field, double the amount of children that are dying. So now that I've better explained that, the second boy, his name is drawn, and it is the boy named Woodbine, not Haymitch. When I read this for the first time, my jaw drops because this is the end of chapter 1. I'm like, what do you mean? Haymitch wasn't selected. We're gonna find out. Steps into like the little pathway, but instead of going up to the stage, he turns heel and he makes a break for it. And Haymitch notes that like this boy is fast and he thinks that Woodbine's gonna get away. And just as he thinks Woodbine is gonna get away, he's shot in the back of the head. So now we have what? 2 girls and 1 boy from District 12? And the Capitol isn't gonna let that slide. Boom. End of chapter 1. Flip the page. Chapter 2 opens on Lenore Dove, Haymitch's girl, trying to comfort and console Woodbine's mother. We hear how there are people in the crowd that are splattered with Woodbine's blood, and the scene is so devastating to Haymitch that he doesn't say the word that he's in shock, but reading it, you can tell this is somebody who is not just witnessing extreme violence, but is living it. And he is shocked to his core. And Lenore Dove is trying her best to comfort this grieving mother. And the peacekeepers are coming to take Woodbine's body away. And Lenore Dove is trying to get in the middle and just get Woodbine back to his mom. And just as a peacekeeper is going to hit Lenore Dove, I'm snapping a lot, I'm so sorry, but that jolts Haymitch into action because that's his girl. That's the person that he wants to protect more than anyone else. So he stands in between this peacekeeper and Lenore, and because of this, he is selected as the replacement for Woodbine. We find out that there is a time delay between recording and what's live, and they say if you're someone intent on intervening, you can be the replacement. What's your name? Drusilla is the one who says that she's very upset that this person has been shot, not because someone's dead, but because it ruins her shoot. Tells Haymitch, you're going to be the replacement, and looks at a peacekeeper and says, you should like shoot this girl. Haymitch is again in shock because now he's like, great, I'm about to go die, and so is my girlfriend. And who else comes to save the day but this person named Plutarch? We don't know his last name yet, but I'm going to go ahead and jump forward a little bit and say Plutarch Heavensby, who we know, or at this point we don't know, but we've met his relative, Hilarious Heavensby, in the last book. Plutarch is a filmmaker right now, and he says, wait, don't go shoot the girl just yet. Let's use her for a tearful goodbye, since we know that Haymitch is going to go to the Hunger Games, and clearly something is going on between these two. Don't shoot her just yet. So they redo the whole shoe. They're like, all right, take two. They start with calling Wyatt. They also cleared out the people who were covered in blood splatter so that it looks like nothing has gone wrong. And then they draw Hamish's name and he's walking up and he's accepting his death, and Lenore is being strong for him and she doesn't cry out so that they don't get to use their relationship as part of their games. And he just has this statement where he goes, I'm so homesick I could die. And he hasn't even left home yet, but in his heart, he doesn't think he's ever going to see District 12 or his family again. As they're loading up, Drusilla is like, you guys have lost your right. You as District 12 have lost your right to your goodbyes. I'm upsetty spaghetti because it's not going well for me. Like, boo-hoo, a kid is dead, but the show must go on. And Plutarch steps in again, and he's like, well, let's just see if we can get some reactions. And he uses this and gets Hamish's mom to agree to have a tearful goodbye in exchange for a couple of minutes together. And his mom takes it, and as they're hugging goodbye for what Hamish believes is the last time, he gives the gumdrops for Lenore to his brother and asks Sid to take it to her, and he gives his mom the money that he got, basically all of his worldly possessions he gives to his family, and they have one last hug, and his mom tells him to remember something his father said in the past, which boils down to, don't let them use you. Don't, whatever they want, still be you. Be strong. Don't let them twist and use you for something you're not. Don't be propaganda. He gets loaded up onto the train, and the last thing he sees through the window as they're leaving District 12 is Lenore Dove on the very last hill, clutching what he sees as a bag and he knows is the bag of gumdrops that he had intended for her, absolutely sobbing. And he feels a little bit at peace because the Capitol took a lot from him, but they didn't take his goodbye with his girl, and that's their goodbye. Not in the square, nothing before. This moment is only for them. Going into chapter 3, we learn more history about District 12, including that at the end of the rebellion, all the adult members of the covey were killed and the children were just herded up and dropped off in District 12. We also see Hamish almost wishing that he had done what Woodbine had done so that his bones would be at rest in District 12. He wishes that he could have a swift, clean death. We also see his conflicting feelings about Plutarch, the man who gave him one last goodbye with his family, but also used him because he didn't get that goodbye for free or out of the goodness of Plutarch's heart. He got the goodbye after his family performed for the goodbye. They had to work for it. We're also learning more about Luella and how she's something of a little sister in Hamish's eyes. And she's his sweetheart because when they were both even younger, she said that he was her sweetheart. And he comments that Lenore Dove has his heart and is his girl. But Luella, she will always be his sweetheart, and she will be the only one who is his sweetheart. We're also learning more about the other tributes from District 12. They all kind of convene in what I would consider the dining cart of the train. We know that Hamish doesn't really see an alliance with all of District 12 because he doesn't have any feelings towards Wyatt. He doesn't know how this boy is going to act, and Maisley is kind of known as a bully in District 12. The only thing he is sure about is that he's going to take care of Luella. Plutarch comes in and he's presenting them with sandwiches. And Hamish clocks it again. He's like, this is kind of for show. He's being like, oh, what a good guy am I? Here's some food. But the attendant who's helping him is rather snarky towards these children that have just been basically slated for death. And Maisley's not having any of this. This is where we really start to see her character come through. She gives back what she gets and more. This helper is being rude about, like, oh, you don't know how to eat a sandwich. And she's like, we're not animals. Where's a plate? Where's a napkin? What do you expect of us? And she really hits home that if we let them treat us like animals and lower our value as beings, they're going to do that. And even though there's some tension between the other three and Maisley, she stands her ground and she sasses everybody in that train car, and she lets them know she's not to be messed with. At this point, they're talking about the rest of the reaping, and we find out that 1, 2, and 4 are considered the careers. I feel like in the last book, this was not a defined thing yet, and now it is. It's everyone knows they've been training their whole lives and they have a title for it now, and it's the careers. We see a back and forth with Drusilla and Maisley setting them up as enemies, and Plutarch kind of plays this in between of tempering Drusilla and warning the kids, like, hey, you may not like it, but she could help or hurt you by helping you get sponsors. So maybe don't sass her. We also get a scene in this train car, in this dining cart, of Plutarch bringing in a birthday cake for Hamish. And Hamish knows that, like, he's being recorded and that this isn't generosity. This is going to be used for propaganda. So he doesn't respond the way Plutarch expects or even wants him to respond. He basically just ignores the cake. And Plutarch admits out loud that this was a miscalculation on his part. Drusilla is once again rude, and Maisley is once again rude right back, to the extent that at this time, Drusilla slaps Maisley, like slaps the shit out of the kid. Like, this girl is going to die, and you're still slapping her. Terrible. Maisley doesn't take it though. She slaps Drusilla right back. Like I said, she gives even more than she gets. She is always the winner. The adults leave, and we see Maisley and Luella, I wouldn't say like fully make amends. Like, there is still tension and they're not each other's favorite people, but there's a more of an understanding of, like, despite everything, we're on the same side. We are both District 12. We are both trying to show that we're more than just animals, that we're more than just sacrifices to the capital, that we're people. We then get a scene of all of the District 12 tributes asleep together, or so we think, and Luella pokes at Hamish and says that she doesn't want Wyatt as an ally, but she wants Hamish as an ally. And Hamish nods and he's like, why don't you want Wyatt? And at this point, we find out that Wyatt's family is not looked well upon in District 12 because they're the bookkeepers. They handle the bets in town, including the bets on who will get reaped and what are kids' odds in the Hunger Games. So she doesn't want that. And honestly, I get it. There's so little they can control at this point, and this is something that they can control. The next scene is them arriving in the capital, and as they're exiting their train, the tributes from District 1 are exiting their train as well. Wyatt, out of what seems to be nowhere, starts spouting out the odds of one of the District 1 tributes based on this person's physical appearance and his temperament that they observe just through leaving the train. And he ends this by saying, I'm not a bookkeeper, I'm an odds maker. I do the analysis of the stats, I review things, and I give odds. So you might not want me as an ally, but you can bet that you need me and my information. So he low-key lets them know that he was clearly awake and overheard their conversation. And as much as they may not like it, he could help them by providing this analysis. We now have all of the tributes arriving in this big open building, this big open space in a building, and the boys and the girls are separated. Their clothes are taken away from them, and they are put in these locker rooms that have showers and of their own volition. Well, not of the tribute's own volition, let me be clear. Without warning, hot, boiling water starts spraying from the shower heads. So again, we're in Hamish's point of view, so we just see the boys' reaction, and they're actively trying to dodge this boiling hot water that is probably hurting them. And then again, without warning, without any control on their part, just further showing how much control they have lost for their own lives. This switches from boiling hot water to, at the moment, Hamish is describing as weird soap, but we later find out is insecticide. I'm sorry, what? And then it switches back to boiling hot water, which now the boys are all fighting to get the water because everything burns. Like, this is insecticide that has been sprayed on them. That's not supposed to be for humans. Anyways, they get done with these terrible showers, are handed paper coverings, and they all go and sit down. We find out that Hamish does have a prep team, and this prep team is academy students. And this is a grade for them. So, similar to last book where the mentors were students and mentoring was their grade, well, we've decided the students can't be mentors, that's too close. But they can be the prep team, and how well they do on prepping these kids to go die. I said what I said. That's their grade. Hamish, I don't want to say he's indifferent to his prep team, but basically he realizes that he needs someone to help him, and if he's polite and nice to his prep team, they are polite and nice to him. They help him get any remaining insecticide off. They give him a peppermint so that he has something in his stomach. It's not great, but it's something. So now they're just waiting for their stylist to come, who is an adult, but apparently does not care about being on time or being respectful. So as we're waiting for the stylist to come, Hamish is thinking about his girl, Lenore Dove, and we see some of her more rebellious qualities, and that all Covey girls are a mystery. I like that nod. to the last book or the previous book. At some point, the other tributes are all being taken out to the chariots, and the initial parade is going to begin. And Luella is the only one to note that, like, their stylist still isn't here. So she asked, she's like, so if we don't have a stylist, do we just skip the parade? Do we just go out in our little paper dresses? What's going on? And I may be reading too much into it, but I feel like at this moment she's hoping to just skip the parade. And boy golly, if only Luella could have skipped this upcoming parade. But at the very last minute, in walks their stylist, Mango. Yeah, I even checked my notes. It is in fact Mango. I just keep referring to him as the stylist in my head because this man does not care at all for the horrors that these children are about to go through, or for the fact that, like, he could help them. He's just there to do the least amount of work and keep his job. And he dresses them in the same costume that he dresses the District 12 tributes every year and sends them off to the chariot to get the parade going. During the parade, the Capitol crowd is going absolutely wild. And at one point, the horses for the District 12 chariot are spooked, and they're so spooked that they rear up and take off. And all of this results in a chariot crash in which Hamish looks down and he's got some really big blood stains, and he has this moment of, all right, I'm gonna die. This is where I end. At least it wasn't a horrible death in the arena. And that's when he notices that this isn't his blood, but it is in fact Luella's blood. And his fellow tributes come up, and she's clearly passed away. Measly has many necklaces on, and she takes one off and says that she was planning on giving one to Luella as her District 12 token. And she still does that in a way. She still puts the necklace on Luella, but now it's a parting gift. It's a token to take her into the afterlife. All this trauma after trauma, I think something just finally snaps in Hamish, and he scoops up Luella's body and makes a break for it because he sees the police, the peacekeepers coming, and he knows they're going to try and hide this death because this wasn't planned. This doesn't go along with what the Capitol wanted to show. And he runs until he's at the front, and he lays her body down in front of President Snow, and he basically gestures to Snow and starts clapping. And in his point of view, he is making Snow be accountable for this little girl's death. Now, during this, Snow is intently looking at Hamish, and Hamish notes that, like, he's not locking eyes with him, but instead he believes that Snow is looking at the striker that he is now wearing as a necklace, and he's using this as his District 12 token. The Capitol citizens, meanwhile, are absolutely loving this. They're cheering. They say, hey, which District 12 boy are you? And he spits in their face, and they're like, yeah, we love it. Really weird take. And we also find out that all of the District 10 and all of the District 6 tributes have been injured in this chaos. We're now at the next day in the training center, and a young boy comes up to him, and we find out that this boy's name is Ampert. And Hamish, even though he's not feeling the greatest, he's still kind and nice to Ampert because something in this boy reminds him of his little brother. And he thinks, if Sid were here, I would want someone to be nice to him. So Ampert basically is like, hey, let's be allies. Not only let's be allies, but I have all of District 7 and all of District 8 tributes ready to be allies as well. And District 11 is still noodling. They're still thinking about if they want to join this big alliance that he's proposing. Hamish doesn't agree one way or the other. And then the training is over and they're finally taken to the apartment that they're going to be staying at to meet their mentors. At this point, and maybe a little bit earlier on, Hamish notes that unlike the other districts, who at this point, the mentors are winners from previous Hunger Games, District 12 doesn't have a winner because the only winner they've ever had died long ago and nobody knows about her. No one remembers her name or talks about her, and she's never talked about in previous Hunger Games recaps or broadcasts. So he knows that his mentors are going to be people from other districts, and he's so upset by this because how can you mentor someone from a district that's not your own, knowing that if that person wins, in this case, 4 people from your home will be dead because of it. And now we're introduced to his mentors, and the first one we're introduced to is a woman named Wyrus, and she's from District 3 and the winner of the previous Hunger Games. And this makes Hamish even more mad because he sees her as a leftover. He sees her as a mentor that no one else would want. And of course, District 12, not thought about, forgotten, given the leftover, given the mentor who can't help him because this isn't how she won her games, through outsmarting not only the other tributes, but the arena itself. That's not what he can do. That's not his strong point. And then almost immediately we're introduced to the other mentor, a woman named Mags, who is from District 4. And she is just the nicest person. And she opens her arms up and she looks at Hamish and she goes, "I'm so sorry about Luella." And at that point, Hamish just breaks and he lets himself be taken care of by this adult figure and lets himself mourn the death of his sweetheart, of his little sister, of his friend, and lets someone else take care of him and have a moment of weakness while he still can. After this, after Hamish cries and settles down and has a moment to himself, we see the 3 tributes and the 2 mentors meet for dinner. And Mags has been kind enough to order food from District 12, food that in District 12 they make during the hard times when you're in mourning. And I think that just shows how kind and thoughtful she is, because she knows that these kids have been through a lot, and sometimes all you want is a little taste of home. And together, Mags and Wyrus talk about how they want to know what the District 12 tributes, what they want besides to win. Because everyone wants to win, everyone wants to live, but not everyone can, only one person can. So what do they want besides that? And the 3 of them all say different things, but basically come to the same conclusion of they want to be themselves and remain themselves, and they want to show the capital citizens that they're people too. And Hamish even says, like, along the same lines, and Megs parallels this to, you want to make it so that maybe 50's enough. We don't need any more Hunger Games. We've done the payment. No one else has to die. In this discussion, Maisie and Wyatt decide that they're going to be allies. And Haymitch knows at this point that they might not want him as an ally, but he still wants to open up the door for them and tells them about Ampert and his allyship plans. Wyrus talks about how important it is to trust your instincts, and they go off to the training center. And before they get in, Maisley kind of gives the boys a pep talk like, hey, act like you are the baddest bitch here, basically. She's like, we're District 12. I slapped Drusilla. Haymitch showed up President Snow. You don't know what we're going to do, and we're going to use that to our advantage. During the course of training, there is a kerfuffle where Haymitch gets basically sucker punched, and even though only one tribute is supposed to have a weapon at any given time, because of this brawl, suddenly Haymitch notices that at least half a dozen tributes have weapons. And he also clocks that there's not that many peacekeepers there. And in fact, the tributes outnumber the peacekeepers 4-1. And he has this moment and he kind of senses that maybe some of the other tributes have the same thought of, maybe we could take them. But that moment quickly passes, and when they're instructed to put their knives down, they do. And at this point, who comes in but Plutarch frickin' Heavensby, and says the inside thought out loud of, why didn't you fight back? You were armed, you outnumber the peacekeepers. Why would you not try to flee? Why would you submit? And Haymitch just goes, well, first, he pauses and he reflects. That's what our boy does. And he finally says, basically, we laid down our weapons because your weapons are better, and we want to basically live another day. We submitted to make it to the next day. Plutarch, on the other hand, nods and goes, but is this worth it? Is this agreement, this arrangement that the capital and the districts have come to, is this something that we should actually let go on? Is this worth living for another day? And he almost makes an aside of, I don't know if it's what I want, but it's so subtle. It's like an afterthought almost, or at least that's how Plutarch wants it to seem. After this all again settles and Plutarch kind of slinks away, Ampert comes up to Haymitch and lets him know that District 10 is in on the alliance. And throughout this, he's been mentioning his father and talking to his father, and Haymitch is like, this kid is insane. All of our families are back at home. And then he meets Ampert's father, who is in the training center as an instructor, and we find out it's a District 3 former victor, Beatty. He has a conversation with Beatty, and he learns that Beatty tried to take down the Capitol's communication, and that is a rebellious act. So his punishment was his son being reaped in the Hunger Games, and they made him come here as an instructor and a mentor to see and live through his son's last days, and that is just the most twisted punishment that I can think of he can do nothing to stop this except for hope that somehow his young son can get through this through the guise of talking about his station. He and Haymitch talk about how one could break a machine. And in this instance, the machine that they're physically talking about is a potato light bulb. But that's the metaphor that they're using for the arena. And Haymitch is basically like, how can we do this? How can we strike back and injure the machine that is the arena, that is a component in the machine that is the Hunger Games, which is in the component of the machine that is the district and the capital relationship. Now, they have to be very careful because peacekeepers are milling about, tributes are milling about, so they can't be clear with their words. But as Haymitch goes to walk away, Beatty not only makes the remark that he was reaped on the day that Haymitch was born, which was probably just a fun fact and not a major plot point, but I am noting it because I think it's important. But he also slips Haymitch a packet of little tools that could be helpful if he can get them into the arena to maybe cause some chaos and disruption and maybe break the machine. During this time, we find out that Maisley has been helping Ampert make this wire into a necklace that he can use as his token, and they are strengthening their own alliance and this larger alliance. And as it comes time for lunch, we find that districts 3, 7, 8, 10, had to think there for a second, 10 and 12, they all sit together as a pack, as an alliance, mirroring what districts 1, 2, and 4 are doing in their career pack. Now, if you remember, District 11, they were still thinking about what they wanted to do. And they quiet down and they're like listening to see what kind of alliance this is. And we also see that the careers, when they're done with their lunch, go over to District 6 and bully them and steal what they have for lunch, which no one likes a bully, and that's just rude. Haymitch takes some leftover food from this big alliance that he has going on with Ampert and goes to the District 6 kids and says, please have some food. Hey, we have this crazy big alliance, and I know that you've said that you want to remain neutral so that you're not targeted by the careers, but really, by remaining neutral, you're just going to be targeted by both sides. Like, look, they're stealing your lunch, and we're not even in the games. This really endears the District 6 tributes to Haymitch, and we also see that their color that they're given is gray, which makes him think of his girl Lenore, and he thinks of it as a sign from her. So they join the pack, and as a large group, they're talking about how the careers have a name and they need a name too, but it can't be something that doesn't represent them. They need something like so distinctly district, and they settle on the name the Newcomers. As this day of training is winding down, we see Maisley do for the other districts in her alliance what she did for Ampert and start helping them either make tokens for their home district or take the tokens that they've brought and improve upon them. And she helps them each in her own individual, albeit sassy way. And as they're being taken home, and by home I mean the apartment with cameras everywhere to make sure they stay in line, only Haymitch is dropped off at a house, and it's a fancy house. And we find out that it's Plutarch's house. And as Plutarch greets him, he notes that, yeah, this isn't a social call. Snow is not happy with Haymitch's display during the welcome parade. They talk and they kind of bond over the fact that they both know the poem that actually gave Lenore her name. And through this whole time, like, Haymitch is basically just trying to, like, show Plutarch that like he's important and he's in person, and just because he's from a poor district, like they can still learn and they can still be smart. Through all of this, we don't know, but President Snow is there and he makes his announcement in a big way, and he's not looking too great. Haymitch clocks that this man is sick, but surprisingly, he doesn't seem embarrassed and he doesn't apologize for it. He owns that he's ill. Plutarch is trying to help President Snow, and Snow is just like, I just need milk. I just need milk. I'll be fine. Just give me some milk. Plutarch looks to Haymitch and goes, hey, there should be milk in this fridge over here. Please go get it. But also, it's not like a request. It's like, go get the milk. Haymitch goes, finds the milk, and since Snow and Plutarch are distracted, he chugs it. He chugs a little thing of milk that's kept in this little fridge, wipes his mouth clean, and turns back and is like, hey, Plutarch, there was no milk in here. It's empty. Oh no. And instead of giving him away, even though Plutarch totally knows that this kid just lied, goes and says, I'll go get some more milk. The servants must have forgotten to fill up the milk in this room. And Haymitch is reflecting about how, as scary as it is to see someone this violently ill, it's almost scarier to himself that he can just stand there and watch it, and he doesn't know if the Haymitch from just a couple of days ago before the reaping would be able to do this, but everything he's lived through has already hardened him, and he doesn't care that Snow is sick and in pain. Plutarch comes back and he gives Snow the milk, but is saying, like, I don't know if you should drink that, like, we should get a doctor. And Snow goes, no, it's just food poisoning. It's just food poisoning. I'll be fine if I have milk and some bread. He's like, in fact, the guy who was in charge of the parade that was, messed up, he had the same food poisoning as me, but he's not so lucky. The food poisoning killed him. I'll be fine. And then he tells Plutarch to go get me some more milk and get me some bread. While Plutarch's gone, Snow is talking to Haymitch, and they start talking about District 12. They start talking about District 12 and Haymitch's token, which is the striker, and Snow asks to see it. Haymitch knows that like nothing he can do can help him at this point, or I guess if he falls in line, he'll be less terribly treated, kind of. So he gives it over. And while holding this, Snow starts talking about his girlfriend, Haymitch's girlfriend, and sees the initials LD. And he just starts spouting out facts that Haymitch is like, this man should not know so much about District 12. He talks about how Lenore must get her first name from a poem, and he's wondering what color her second name is. And this is just absolute. Haymitch is like spiraling. He's like, how does this man know so much? And Snow even like name drops Amber and Ivory, names that Haymitch would know from the covey. Heck, Snow even says that's how the covey works. He knows these things, and we as readers know that, of course, he knows these things. He was dating Lucy Gray Baird. Haymitch doesn't know these things. He's really freaked out. And as Snow gives him back his token, Snow basically confirms, like, yeah, you have to die. Everything that's happened, there's no way you're making it out of the arena alive. At this point, your choice is, are you going to die an easy death, or are we really going to torture you before we die? With the subsequent choice of, if you fall in line, not only will you have a clean death, but your mom, your brother, your girl, they will all not be affected by it. So threats within threats. Haymitch is basically told, get in line or else. And part one ends with Snow calling out that hide and seek is over. And who is standing in the doorway but Luella? Luella, who is dead. And that ends part one. I'll see you guys, for you in literally a second, for me in a day, to review and talk about part two. So let's get on over to that.